There's been a lot of up and down with KTM lately, in the past 2 months especially. And there's been good news about a week ago at the end of February. There were good news that it looks like they have a way forward with KTM. So if you know the channel a lot, you know I'm a huge fan of the brand and I'm a huge fan of the motorcycles. I, as a matter of fact, just got my fourth Super Adventure, 1290 Super Adventure model for this season. I haven't shared it yet on the channel. I will at some point. So naturally, I'm interested what happens to the company, and this is where I share my 2 cents on the whole issue, if you're interested. What's up, my biker friend? Welcome back to another, maybe a little different video than you used to, where I share my thoughts on what's been happening with KTM lately. For those of you guys that are not really in the picture, that haven't followed what's going on, here's the sort of the short end of it. KTM filed for bankruptcy. They announced it last year, somewhere in the middle of November, and officially filed at the end of November. Then came a bit of a restructuring process, and some of the issues kind of surfaced, sort of about the magnitude of the issues that KTM had financially. So there were the initial estimates of almost 3 billion euros in debt, which is an insane number of debt when you look at sort of the actual business size of KTM. And it's not just KTM, it addresses the Pira holding group, but the majority share is in KTM. So that's basically their sort of their cash cow, if you wish. But yeah, they were going through that restructuring process, and there's been good news as of last week. Obviously, they achieved some kind of agreement with their creditors, and it was an insane amount of creditors, 2,500 creditors that still get money from KTM. And somewhere they've reached the agreement to write off 70% of that almost 3 billion euro debt. I think the latest number was closer to 2.5, but it doesn't really matter. It's an insane amount of money that the creditors had to write off. So there's already been a lot of fallout, and I'll get into that in a second as well. But the good news is that at least they have a lifeline now. They can move forward, at least for the time being. As part of that negotiation, I think they agreed to pay back that 30% within 90 days, which is very, very short. So that means they still have to get that money, that kind of investment, and at least they haven't shared who will sort of bring the money to the table yet. I'm sure they have an idea of what it is. The whole thing to me seemed to have been pretty much well planned out, every step of the way. I'll get to that in a second as well. So that's basically the gist of it. This is where we are at the moment. And it seems like at least KTM, from the marketing campaign, there's a lot of marketing through all social media channels. I'm sure you've seen it, that, you know, this is a new start for the company. You know, they've fallen off the bike and they're getting back on it, and it's ready to race moving forward. And I think that's great. I think that's very positive. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the brand. I've had mostly good experiences with my 1290 series. And if you know the channel, you know that I had one issue, a pretty big one as that too. And that was my engine damage with my 1290 Super Adventure, which happened, again, this is just a short recap of that. There's a long video on where I explain what happened and what happened afterwards with the service. But the gist of it is that that engine broke at 190 kilometers an hour on the Autobahn, and it kind of disintegrated right on the spot, and it kind of left me stranded. I was on my way to the Trans-Italia Marathon and had a subsequent road trip planned. So all that seemed to sort of be out the window at that very moment if it hadn't been for Stefan, who stepped in and sort of provided me a replacement bike, which KTM did not do. But I had replacement bikes. I was able to go on the Trans-Italia Marathon, do my trip, and then I shared the whole sort of experience. Overall, I have to say, I know other people had different experiences. In the end, KTM fixed the issue, and it was still under warranty, so I got a new engine in. It took a bit longer than I wanted to, but in the end, that was fine. But I know there's a lot of you guys out there that weren't that lucky with the service that KTM provides, and that has been an issue. And of course, the question is that part of the reason why KTM is where it is now, because they've neglected sort of their core fans, the loyal fans, and the service and the quality. Is that an issue why KTM is where it is now? And I'll get into that question in a second as well. And then the other part is, what can we expect going forward? If they actually make it through the next 3 months to see if they can bring up the cash. What can we expect from KTM? Of course, as reading a crystal ball, I have no idea what's going to happen, but what are the likely sort of ways forward? That's the other thing we're going to cover in this video. Okay, let's get started with the issues that led up to the problem. Now, contrary to what you probably would think, and again, I have no insight in, so I'm not sitting on the board. I have no closer insight than anyone else of you guys, but I think the quality issue in the service, that wasn't a big deal. If you kind of read through sort of the issues that have been out there, or read through the information that's out on the internet, that hasn't really been an issue. Just to address the quality issues, other manufacturers, they have similar issues. Let's take BMW, for example. You can all remember when the 1300 GS was introduced, they had lots of issues. Little knickknacks to serious issues where relays caught on fire and threatened to burn on the bike and stuff like that. Also with the outgoing model, the shaft drive, they had huge issues with that, and some serious accidents because the shaft drive was corroding. So it's not a KTM issue that they have problems, technical problems. The big difference is when BMW has an issue, they tend to have very responsive and good service. So there isn't really that much of an outcry there. Same as with KTM. The biggest issue that KTM had recently was the camshafts of the 790 and 890 models, and the voices were getting louder and louder. There was this Facebook group that you might have heard of. There's just a few hundred in the beginning, and it grew to several thousands where people chimed in. It's not that all of these people had the issue, but you can tell that people were interested in that, and people were sharing their stories. And KTM was very, very slow to even sort of acknowledge that there is an issue, let alone respond to the whole issue. So I think that's the major difference. I think they make good products overall. I don't think they're any worse than anything else. If not, to me, they're a lot more exciting, some of the stuff that they put out. But in the end, it's the service. Something that does break, and these are expensive motorcycles. You expect that to be fixed a bit quicker than what had happened in the past, I guess. So hopefully, as part of the restructuring, that's something they're going to take a look at. I don't think there's going to be a priority item in the beginning. I think they need to sort a few things out before that, but hopefully in the midterm, that's something that they will look at, because, us motorcycle riders, we tend to be pretty brand loyal. Lots of them are. And if you sort of heard that loyalty at some point, I'm sure there's a lot of former KTM fans out there that won't be going back to the brand anytime soon. So if you have issues like this, it's really hard to get your hardcore fan base back on board again. So that's a long-term thing. It's long-term thinking. And I guess KTM hasn't really been in that long-term thinking mode. And that kind of brings me to the issue of what got KTM to amount such an insane amount of debt that basically led them to file for bankruptcy. And if you look at what happened sort of in the few years leading up to this is not something that happens overnight. This is not because you neglected the service that you bring up debts on that. That's obviously something completely different. And it was the case. I mean, if you look at where KTM came from just 20 years ago, they're producing a few thousand units a year, and now they're a well-recognized brand globally. So they've made it in those 20 years, winning their cars back-to-back, I think 18 titles back-to-back, and now the recent 2025 title again. So they know what they're doing. They're producing great products, and they know how to win. But at the same time, they're the risk-taking, let's put it this way, on the business side has been pretty crazy. And again, these large stock-traded companies, they're rewarded for short-term success. So we've seen a lot of acquisitions, especially in the past few years. And I think the last one was MV Agusta. The bringing brands in. Gas is well known. Husqvarna goes back quite a bit. So they're bringing new brands on board and acquisitions that cost a lot of money and they brought the debt up to a point where when external conditions change, and they do change all the time, with interest rates going up, with the pandemic, bringing everything into sort of a crazy upheaval. And if you're running such a risky business, and external conditions change to the worst, then that's where you end up. And I think that's been sort of the issue. So they've known that they've had an issue for quite some time. And I think the whole thing is a part of a plan. to fix the company, and they've had the plan for a long time. I mean, if you think about KTM came out swinging in November, and I think it's no coincidence that they made this announcement after the EICMA. They came out swinging at EICMA with the manufacturer with the most innovations coming out, most new bikes, most innovations. I mean, it was all KTM, it was all orange. I mean, think about the 390 series that are coming out. It's going to be a very exciting bike, I'm sure. But also then on the big end, the 1390, the automatic transmissions, and everything between the 990 platform for the Super Duke, which hopefully is going to turn into some kind of an adventure sort of platform. So there's been a lot of innovation coming out of KTM, and I think it was for good reason that they sort of made sure they placed that on the market and showing the world that they can make good products and that they can win the Dakar race. But that came after they announced that they're bankrupt. So, and I think that was part of the strategy, just to show everyone, okay, it's still worth it to invest, because they knew they would be at this point that they would have to ask additional money from investors in order to support the company going forward. So that brings me to the service part. So even if they were aware of the issues that they've had with the service, I'm sure they had no leg room financially anymore to address that in a proper manner. And that's probably a reason why it was neglected. It just wasn't a priority. They knew they're going to hit the wall at some point. And so what they did is just show that they're still capable of sort of producing great products. My personal take on it, I have no idea if that's actually true. And I'd be interested in what you think about it. So to leave that in the comment section. So what does it mean going forward? There were rumors. I'm not even sure if those rumors are true or not. Sometimes it's really hard to figure out what's fake nowadays and what isn't. But if you heard, BMW was one of the potential interested investors in KTM, and their plan was to basically just take KTM, gut the whole thing, remove everything from Austria, so the whole production and the development, just move it out of Austria and move it to Germany, and then move all the production of the bikes far east to India or to China, whatever, and just maybe keep the best parts that obviously BMW is not very strong. It's the whole off-road part where BMW is not very strong. Not really sure if that is true, but if it is or was for some reason, I'm glad it's not happening, at least not at the moment, because that would be absolutely the worst outcome. You may think of KTM, you may not like the brand or whatever, but I think it's good to have, even if you don't like KTM, it's good to have a brand like KTM. It's, they're definitely one of the few brands that are definitely pushing the limits when it comes to technical development, and I think it keeps everyone else on their toes too. It keeps BMW on their toes, it keeps Ducati on their toes, and for us consumers, it's a great thing no matter what you're into. We're getting better bikes because of that. More expensive bikes as well too, but we're getting better motorcycles, which is nice. So even if you don't like KTM, I think it's important to have KTM in the whole mix of it. So it's good to know that if that was the true intention of BMW, which it's hard to believe, but maybe it was the case, that's off the table at the moment, which is a good thing. So at least we can hope for a company, KTM, that is very close to what we know. The issues they're going to have is because they're bankrupt, they're still broke. They're still very much broke. I mean, even if you have a write-off of 70% of your debt, you still need to repay close to 800 million in the next 90 days. That's going to be a huge issue. And the other thing is, the factory has been closed down. So they closed down the factory. They laid off, I think, close to 700 people already, which is bad enough. And you need to start up production again. You need money for that. And you need parts supply from all those 2,500 creditors. There are a lot of them, I'm sure, were quite crucial to the production part of it. And now that they've written off 70% of the money that they're owed, they'll be very reluctant for longer payment terms. They may actually require upfront payment in order just to keep their own doors open. So that's going to be the biggest challenge going forward now, is to make sure that they can ramp up the production again, that they have enough liquidity financially to sort of ramp the business up again. So for that, it needs a huge investment. It's officially not known who that is, at least at that point of shooting the video. I'm sure they have some idea, and they must have some idea a long time ago. This is just part of the sort of the milestones and the plans that they're going through. They have an idea who that's going to be. There must have been discussions, because 90 days wouldn't be enough to do all the negotiations, I'm sure. So we'll see. I'll be quite surprised to that it could be their sort of the Indian partner. So the Bajaj Auto, I think I pronounced it correctly. They already have almost 50% of a stake in Pira. So the Pira is the holding company that has KTM and the other brands. So that's already almost half. So if they would go in with another 800 million investment, it probably puts them over 50% of the. I don't know if that's realistic, but it's already a partner that they work with. Could be Chinese investor, who knows? We'll see in the next few days. So that's good. Maybe a few words of concern is that, I don't think people speak enough about this, but it's, talked about the 700 people that have already been laid off, and it might hit additional people. And that's just the people working in the KTM factory. Obviously, looking at 2,500 creditors, there's a lot of sort of small and mid-sized companies that will have a very hard time because of the bankruptcy of KTM. Some may actually have folded already. No one talks about it because it never really surfaces to a level where people care. So it's quite a reckless way to go about business, to be honest. I mean, again, it's the same people that brought KTM to where it is today, but it's the same people that have been quite reckless of sort of being very aggressive in the expansion plans of getting the company to a point where essentially it's everyone else that has to bail them out. If you have to write off 70% of the debts, I'm sure there's companies in there that are too small to cover that, and that means they go under themselves. Plus all the ripple effect it has, for Mattighofen, the place where most of the development happens and the production, and at least in Austria happens, it has huge ripple effects to the rest of the society. So it's quite a irresponsible way of going about your business. Unfortunately, we've seen that from other large companies as well. So that's something to be very concerned about. And my heart goes out to those people affected. Anyway, that's what I think about it. So I'm still with the positive feel of it. I think it's a good thing. I would have hated to see KTM go under and just, being slashed up into smaller pieces and disappear basically from the market. It's great that going forward. I hope for everyone that's working at KTM and is associated with them that things will go uphill very quickly, because I think they make great products. They must have amazing people to put these products out, because, you can't half-ass stuff like this if you produce high-end products like this. So for all of those, and for us as consumers, I hope that KTM gets out of this and comes out stronger at the end of it. And I'll be interested to see what you have to say. Please be civil in the comments section, but I'd be interested what you have to say if you have any thoughts on this. These are mine, and share yours. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Until then, ride safe. Stay awesome.